Hey guys, Marill here, and welcome back to Let's Talk. I believe this is episode 5. And in today's episode, I'm going to be discussing my experience in the competitive Pokemon community, because your boy used to be a competitive battler. I use the term used to be because I am no longer really into competitive. I probably could still do it, I just don't find it fun anymore. Again, this is just me discussing my thoughts and my time, my experiences. So I would love to hear yours and what you think about it. And, let's remember to be civil with each other. So let's get into it. Um, to start off, well, I guess I should start with when I started. So I think this was by the time Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon released, I made a couple friends in the Pokemon community. We began talking a lot more, and he had a history of competitive battling. So, well, I guess the first thing that really got me into it was this friend. He was doing New Year's Eve battles, and he was battling people on New Year's Eve in Sun and Moon. And I was like, oh, I'll bring my shiny legendary team and kick his ass because I thought legendaries were the best ever. And then he proceeds to kick my ass with his competitive team. I'm like, oh, that's cool. How can I do that? So he starts teaching me how to. He gave me some of his sets. I began to learn how to do my own sets and how to do my own stuff. And I began to battle people on Showdown, battle him, battle other friends. We did some of our own Discord tournaments, and it was just fun, and I really enjoyed it. But as time began to drag on, as the internet became more prevalent, because the past 6 years, even 6 years ago, it wasn't near as complicated as it is now, and people weren't using as many sets as they used to. It was still a problem using other people's sets, but it became more prevalent later on down the line. And that was part of my problem. Was anytime you go online, you'd see people using entry hazards, bulky Pokemon, sleep sets, things that I find very annoying, because we actually call them tryhard sets, because you're so focused on winning instead of having fun. And again, I like to have fun when I do something, and I don't want to use other people's sets and grind these stupid sets out just to win. I want to make my own sets and have fun with it. And so as people began to use more and more of each other's sets instead of using their own, I kind of fell out of it because it was just, it wasn't fun anymore. Another thing that kind of made that decision was learning more about Smogon and VGC. So first of all, I despise Smogon and I despise VGC, and I know people are going to hate me for that. And this is not to say I dislike the people who participate in VGC. I just dislike the format. Again, because of how it's kind of become use specific Pokemon and specific strategies to win, rather than, oh, let's come up with these unique strategies and these fun things to play. And the other thing is Smogon. So my biggest problem with Smogon and VGC is the way they treat Pokemon. And I know this sounds very anime-ish, but they're like, oh, you cannot use this Pokemon, it won't work. When in reality, if you enjoy using a Pokemon, you can make it fucking work. I've done it. I have friends who've done it. I mean, there's literally people who swap with Dunsparce. With the right setup and the right team, you can make it work. The other thing is there's a lot of very negative things about the people at Smogon. I'm not going to go into it. It was before my time as a competitive battler, but learning about that made me sway right away from it, because I don't want to support people who've done the alleged things that certain people at Smogon have done. And if you'd like to learn more about that, I'm tempted to bring a friend onto the podcast so we can discuss the Smogon scandal. So if you'd like to do more about that, I would love to do that in the near future. Even I did some competitive battling in Sword and Shield, but again, it was kind of bland, boring stuff. Especially because the biggest thing about Sword and Shield were they focused on legendaries, right? The legendaries were super OP. Dynamaxing was unbalanced. You could Dynamax and take out half someone's team, or you could figure out how to counter it. It was, Dynamaxes, they were better than Mega Evolution competitively, but they were still kind of broken. So I didn't really like that. So eventually I decided, I'm going to do something about this. And I wrote a college essay and it just happened to quote with my English class, but I wrote a college essay on how it was essentially on how the current competitive set format was kind of toxic, and it was bad because if you wanted to get into it, it was very difficult to get into it because you were trying to play with someone else's set, and you were trying to do everything they were doing, and you didn't really know what you're doing. Part of competitive play was building your own teams, figuring out how your own teams play, and then using your mons. If you were just using something someone else built, you didn't know how to use it because it was something someone else built for their team and their strategies, and it didn't really work for you unless you had their entire team and their strategies. Again, there were mons that were immune to this kind of thing, but it was just overall a negative thing, and I feel like a lot more people would have gotten into competitive if it were more like, if to be frank, if there were more draft leagues. I love draft leagues. I love watching draft leagues because they make you think a lot more. You don't have access to all the Pokemon. You choose a selection, someone else chooses a selection, and you know their selection. You kind of have to figure out how to counter their selection, and they have to figure out how to counter your selection, and it's a lot more balanced. But after writing that essay, I came up with an idea. I'm like, what if we can make a format that's both fun and educational? So I came up with what I called the Chaos Cup. Because at the time I was in college, and one of the classes I was taking was CS, I think it was 10 or 1100, and it was like basic Python shit. So I wrote a Python script that would generate it was very similar to Ranbats, but it was Ranbats that you build. So it gave you, we decided on one random Mega, one random Legendary, and then 4 other completely random, fully evolved Pokemon. It would also give you 6 random items that you could choose from. So essentially you had to take this team and you had to build it with your items and your movesets, right? You built a custom team. And surprisingly, it was balanced as hell. Like, we tested it so much, and we would go back. I would win, he would win, we'd tie, or one of us would come close. It was just so balanced and so much fun, and I had a couple fun tournaments that we did, and I'm thinking about bringing that back to the channel eventually. So if you do want to participate in that, I would love to hear it down below, because part of what's kept me from doing another one is I want it to be a little bit larger of a tournament, and I'm not sure if I can do that unless I get more people to participate. So I need to find a list of a fairly large group of people to participate in that and find the time to do it. So if you're interested in that, that was one of the best competitive things I'd ever done. So, and then after that, I just kind of fell off, especially with BDSP. It was like the competitive scene in BDSP was basically the Diamond and Pearl format with some modifications. So it wasn't really fun. I did make a Chaos Cup Python script for it, but it never really worked out because it was without the Megas. There were a lot less legendaries to deal with. Oh, let me also state, we didn't just use any items. There were certain Megas that were banned. There were certain legendaries that were banned, and there were certain items that were banned just because we felt like those would be too overpowered. Like some Mega legendaries, some legendaries like Zacian and Zamazenta. Yeah, those, like, it's just blatantly. The other rules of the format were, I don't like entry hazards and stall, so we kind of banned entry hazards and certain stall Pokemons. Obviously, Paraflinch was banned. General things that are very negative and very overused, we banned, and it was really fun. So that's kind of my experience in the competitive Pokemon community. Again, no hate towards anyone specifically. It's just my experience and my thoughts on it. And I'd love to leave an open conversation in the comments below, as long as we're civil. This is Professor Marill signing off. Peace out.